Good afternoon. I'm Dior Cotton. I am the STARS Improvement Education and Communication Consultant, and today I am going to be teaching Simone Spencer, a student, how to effectively facilitate using a PowerPoint presentation. Today's objectives will be to explain how preparation is really key to delivering a successful presentation. Also, we're going to discuss effective delivery of PowerPoint presentations and identify some common PowerPoint mistakes that you should avoid in the future. Our agenda will be to first determine if PowerPoint is the appropriate tool, and then also to prepare for your presentation. We'll spend a lot of time on preparation and not as much time on presenting, which is exactly the calculation and method you should leverage when you're preparing your presentations. Any questions before we get started?
No.
All right, so first, is PowerPoint the right tool? So the question, to PowerPoint or not to PowerPoint? So when is PowerPoint the right tool for the task at hand? And what are some advantages and disadvantages of using PowerPoint? We're also going to talk about some time and financial considerations and when you're trying to make that decision about whether or not you're going to use PowerPoint as your facilitation tool. So let's talk about when PowerPoint is the right tool for the task at hand. What are the right topics, the right settings, the right level of interactivity? So if you're thinking about from a topics perspective, if you are training someone we're going to require them to use a tool in a certain way, PowerPoint's probably not the right way to go about it. PowerPoint is a tool that just displays text on a screen. So if you're trying to teach someone how to use power equipment and you want them to be able to do so safely, a demonstration or a video presentation may be the better tool. PowerPoint's really when there's some content that you want to deliver via facilitated session, not a lot of conversation happening, not a brainstorming session, more of a brain dump session. And you also want to consider settings. Where will you be when you're presenting this? Are you going to be in a conference room? Are you going to be facilitating over the internet? Is a factory the right place for a PowerPoint presentation? Probably not. In those cases, you might want to provide a written reference material that individuals can educate themselves from. And then also think about your level of interactivity. A PowerPoint is truly for presenting, facilitating to an audience. That's the time that you want to use that. If you plan on having brainstorming sessions, or if you plan on having some discussion topics where you need to write things on a board or demonstrate how to do something, then PowerPoint is most likely not the right tool to use. Any questions about when PowerPoint might be the right tool to use? Okay, so let's think about some advantages and disadvantages of PowerPoint. PowerPoint can be leveraged successfully when you think about how quickly it can be created. Once you know what you want to say, it's pretty quick to get into that PowerPoint software and create the slide deck. You want to make sure that it's something that's very simple to update and it's an effective visual aid. You know, as you're sitting here and you're looking at the screen, you're able to see some of those key topics that I want to hit on, but you're not necessarily using it as a reference material. And so some of those disadvantages could be when it's poorly formatted. If you've got a PowerPoint presentation and it's busy and there's lots of transitions coming in and out like people were doing in the 80s, it's a little bit distracting. It's taking focus away from the presenter and making the individuals focus on the screen. Also, if it's too detailed, if everything that you're going to say is already on the screen, why do they need you in the room? Just send them the PowerPoint and let them read it themselves. Or create a guide, a quick reference guide, a tool, some instructions. But you really want to use the PowerPoint to deliver a high message, but it's just the background. The facilitator should be the focus of the participants in the room. And you shouldn't use it as a crutch. If me as the presenter or facilitator, if I'm reading from the screen, if I'm leveraging PowerPoint and I'm not sharing with you insights and guidance that I already know, then what's the benefit of me being in the room? Am I properly prepared? Am I the right subject matter expert? So you want to definitely make sure that you're not using PowerPoint as a crutch for presenters in your organization. So then think about if there's any time or financial considerations to using PowerPoint. How much time do you have to present? How much time should you prepare? And then also, are there any cost implications? When we think about presenting, most times you can probably keep someone's attention for 15 minutes, 18 minutes, possibly an hour if the content is engaging. So think about how much time you have to present, what's the forum for the presentation, and then craft your PowerPoint in a way that will ensure the facilitation is successful. So now we've talked about the time that it takes to present, but what about the time it takes to prepare? There's different rules of thumb. Some rules of thumb say that for every 1 minute you're presenting, you should prepare for 10. So for a 15-minute presentation, that could be 150 minutes, or 2 hours and 2.5 hours. If you're preparing for a 3-day conference, that could take weeks, if not months, to prepare. So you really need to think about how long you're going to be presenting, who you're presenting to, and that's going to help, and the topic you're presenting, and that's going to help you determine how long it should take you to prepare. If it's something that you're not very familiar with, you may have to do a ton of research and fact finding, maybe even some experimentation before you can figure out what it is that you'll be presenting to the audience. Think about if there's any cost implications as well. If this is software that you already have, there's relatively no cost to creating a PowerPoint presentation. But if you are, doing this individually, or you have a smaller company, you may have to buy the software, train individuals on how to use it. So really think about those cost implications. But in most scenarios, you probably already have a desktop or a laptop that's been loaded with the software, and so cost implications are most likely nil. The only exception to that, I will say, is if you plan on providing printed documents that are versions of your slides. Depending on how many participants you have, you may have to send those off somewhere else to have them printed. If they're going to be printed in color, if they're going to be bound. So those are the cost implications you'll have to consider. So now let's talk about that very critical preparation stage. So one thing is key is always prepare your PowerPoint presentations in advance. If you think about that rule of thumb where you need at least 2.5 hours to prepare for a 15-minute presentation, preparing them in advance, if not weeks, giving you a chance to practice and rehearse is key. Make sure that that PowerPoint presentation includes an agenda and objectives. You want to make sure that when your participants enter the room, you guys have a chance to level set on why you're there, what you're going to accomplish, what are their benefits of paying attention and focusing during the presentation, and how the day will flow. You also want to, as you're thinking about the way that that day will flow and you're considering that, think about that and the order of the content. As you can see, we talked about the time it takes to present, preparing, and then the cost implications. Preparing be that essential tool, that's the next piece that we're talking about now. And then also limit the amount of words on your slide. As you notice on this slide, we've got just a few bullet points, but there's a lot more that I've said. You don't want everything that you're going to say to be on the slide. You can always leverage the speaker notes functionality to capture any additional content. You also want to prepare your presentation space. If at all possible, do a trial run in the actual space. Make sure that the technology that you need is there. Make sure that the room is set up appropriately so that your participants can see the screen and you're not blocking the screen. Display the presentation on the screen. Make sure it's got the right resolution. Make sure that it's visible to everyone in the room and you've got the appropriate seating arrangement set up. Also ensure that all the audio-visual functionality is working. If there's anything that's in your presentation, like a video, where you're going to want people to be able to both see and hear something embedded in your presentation, test that functionality. Test it from different points in the room to make sure that everyone in the room will be able to hear it. Also, practice progressing through the slides. If a participant has a question and says, hey, can you go back to the prior slide? Make sure that you know how to go back, how you move forward, and then also how to pivot to other programs. It may be that you're going to be taking someone through something that's a Word document or launching that Word document. Make sure that you know how to get to Microsoft Word and get back to your PowerPoint presentation. And if at all possible, secure a wireless pointer or mouse that you can move about the room and not be held hostage by where your laptop is living. And you also think about preparing your participants. Do all the participants know what to expect? Do they know where they're supposed to be and what they're going to need to have in that room? Are they willing participants, or are they being forced here for some sort of a training requirement, or it's been delegated to them by their leader? And is there any prerequisite learning or training that they should have? If so, you want to make sure that they understand the topic at hand. You provide them some reference materials that they can review and study before entering the room. And then also think about those materials that you may want to provide to them that they should bring with them. So let them know, I'm going to send you out a checklist. Go ahead and complete that checklist and be sure to bring it with you on the day of the presentation. And then think about anything that you should provide. If these are folks that are traveling from out of town, sometimes it's possible that they have forgotten to bring notepad or pencils or anything else that's going to help drive the message home that you're delivering. So make sure you think about any of those things that you should provide to the participants. Prepare yourself. Key to preparation is practice, practice, practice. Rehearse your presentation. Have a printed copy of your notes. Sometimes you may be presenting somewhere in a space you've never been before. So make sure that you've prepared yourself with a printed copy of your notes. And before you get started, take care of your biological needs. Use the restroom. Be well rested and well fed. Make sure that you're hydrated so that you don't get parched right during your presentation. And make sure that you've got some water so if it is a long presentation, you have a chance to, wet your whistle during your presentation. It's time to present. It's showtime. So always look and speak to the participants. In this case, I've just got one participant, so I apologize that you're getting all my attention. But if you've got a room with multiple participants, be sure to, walk the room, move about the stage, make eye contact with different individuals so that everyone thinks that you're speaking to them. Provide that sort of reference point. And don't read from the slide. A quick glance is fine to make sure that you know where you are, but don't stand there, block the screen where the participants can't see, or even worse, have your back to the participants and read directly from the slide. A lot of times there's functionality where maybe there's a place where individuals can reference the content at their feet, or they'll have something going on with the slide right next to them, or they've got notes on their phone. No matter what you use for those additional notes, be sure also just to reference that and don't read that either. Be it index cards, your telephone, your iPad. Reference it, don't read it. And engage the participants. If necessary, and the participants, oops, I went way too far. Okay, if you're talking to the participants and you notice that they're all reading the screen instead of looking at you, black the screen out. Use the B key, black the screen out, and once you know you've got everyone's attention back on you and you're ready to progress in the content, bring the screen back to life. All right, so now we've kind of gone through the preparing, the presenting, some of the do's and don'ts. Let's go over some of the final thoughts, and let's open it up for questions. Perfect timing.
Okay, so you said press the B.
Yes.
Can we have
Yes.
C?
Yeah, so when you're in presentation mode, you simply press the letter B. The screen blacks out, and when you press the W key, the screen comes back to life. And this will only work if you're in presentation mode. If you're just on the regular slides, it wouldn't work, but you have to be in PowerPoint show mode. So that was a great question. Any other questions?
Not that I can think of right now.
And let's think about preparing. Can you remember some of those rules of thumb for how much time to prepare versus for each minute that you're presenting?
You said for a minute you should practice 10 minutes.
You should prepare for 10 minutes.
Prepare for 10 minutes.
Yeah, and practice, I would say practice as long as you need to feel comfortable with the content. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. If it's something you've done before, you may not have to practice at all. I'll just give you an example. We have a document that we use called the STARS Roadshow. If a department asks to learn more about STARS, anyone on the team can go grab that roadshow, and if they've used the content before, they may not need to rehearse or practice at all. Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, that's fine. No pressure. So let's just review today's objectives and let's see if we kind of got through all the content. And then that may help you understand if you've got any more questions. So we were going to explain how preparation was key to a successful presentation, discuss effective delivery of a presentation using PowerPoint, and identify some of those common PowerPoint mistakes to avoid. Too much text on the slide, looking at the screen and reading from the screen versus engaging with your participants. Reading your notes, blocking the view of the screen for your participants, as well as making sure that there wasn't too much content on the slides. So now let's review some of those do's and don'ts so that we can avoid some of those PowerPoint presentation mistakes. So you always want to, if you're able to, share your slides, but do so after the presentation. You don't want to share the slides before the presentation. This is just a general rule of thumb. And I'll just be honest, if someone sends me the presentation prior to the meeting, I'm going to look at the slides. I'm going to say, I got what I needed from the slides, so I'm not going to go to the presentation. Or I'm going to go to the presentation. I may not be paying full attention. I may have